Hello, I am here to talk to you now about the book I'm writing. Well, it's not coming out yet, but I'm writing. I have finished this book. I have all 26 chapters completed, but I do need to edit it a bunch and, do the various things that need to be done to make it better. And then, of course, whatever steps come after that as far as publishing goes, I am not too sure about what comes next. But I figured I'd try and, share a bit of the beginning at least, and I want to do a dramatic reading of the first chapter. This might not stay the same, but it is the most up-to-date version of the chapter, right now at least. But of course, it could be further edited later, but as of right now, this is the first chapter of my book, The Coming Storm, which is going to be the first of a series, assuming it ever get published, so on, so on. But anyway, this would be the first chapter of that first book. So yeah, I know, I don't just do stupid videos, I also write too. Crazy, huh? Anyway, here we go. Chapter 1, Hunting the Beast. "I think it went this way," Captain Malcolm Ambrose said to the others. He was bent low to the ground, examining the tracks in the torchlight. He was an aging man, but with those years had come wisdom. He was rather large, balding, and had a thick beard. "Where did the blasted ranger go?" he asked irritably. "This is what he was supposed to be good at." A mysterious figure suddenly melted out of the forest surrounding them. He was short, hooded, and had serious eyes and reddish hair. He was small but strangely compact, filled with muscle. "Looking for me, Captain?" he said politely. "There was no need to sneak up us. Damn it. There was no need to sneak up on us like that," Malcolm said. "We have important matters at hand. Lives on the line. We don't have time to be messing around." "Apologies, Captain," Gareth Abadan said with a nod. "I didn't intend to scare you. I thought you could hear me. As you said a moment ago, it did go this way. I scouted ahead a bit. This beast is definitely going this direction, probably to its home." One didn't need to be a master tracker like Gareth to see that the beast had come this way. Not only could Gareth clearly see the prints of the unholy creature's massive paws, but there was also a trail of blood accompanying it. Judging by the size of the prints it had made in the mud, this thing had to be massive. Gareth gently ran his fingers through the blood on the ground, feeling its texture. He couldn't be absolutely sure, but he strongly suspected it to be human blood. It had struck again. "Is that?" one of the soldiers asked, his eyes wide. "Yes," Gareth replied solemnly. "It's blood. Let's just hope that it's from one of the nearby livestock." He stood up and motioned for the company of men to follow him farther into the forest. As the local ranger, Gareth had several duties. He kept track of the wildlife in the area, maintaining balance between the human and the natural worlds. He made sure that people stayed safe and that animals were never overhunted or overpopulated. He preferred the company of animals to people, so he had grown to like the job, and more particularly his privacy. He had grown to dislike people in general. They were so often taken with violence, cruelty, and greed, and Gareth had learned that they were better off left alone. He also served as an authority figure outside of cities and towns in this area of Iredell, and often had to deal with rows of bandits attacking people on the roads in between villages. He didn't like fighting, so usually he preferred to outsmart people like that if he could. But oftentimes they forced his hand and turned it into a fight, and more often than not, he came out on top. But arresting was such a hassle. Occasionally there were times he was called to hunt down predators that were a threat to the people he had sworn to protect. Times such as now. But this was turning out to be like no predator that Gareth had ever seen. He had yet to come in contact with it, but by the clues it had left behind it in its tracks, he knew it was large, swift, deadly, and difficult to find. It had already taken 2 people from the nearby village of Torin, a small girl and a middle-aged man. The man had disappeared a couple of days ago, missing from his home, which lay on the outside of Torrid, with his door broken down. The local troops that investigated the town had been able to surmise there had been no human attack. Thus Gareth, who was the best tracker for miles around, had been called in to help. But just hours ago it had taken its second victim. A small girl had been stolen through her window, ripped out of her bed, and dragged in the night before anyone could investigate the screams. Gareth and a garrison of troops knew they had to work quickly. If they were to be lucky, they could still find the monster and save the girl. But Gareth knew that the odds weren't looking good. It had been hours since she had been taken, and they were very deep in the woods. Anything could be out here. Gareth still wasn't quite sure what this beast was, so how could he guess whether it might have killed already? How did he even know that he and his troops could take it on? After all, the creature had been bold enough to take a child right out of the village. Any beast willing to do that was either very desperate or could back up its boldness. Either way, this was going to be truly tough indeed. Gareth reflected on the fact that humankind had not had a predator for a great many centuries. The old monsters like trolls, griffins, direwolves, hydras, and even the famed dragons had all died out long ago. Did one still live, perhaps? The only thing that was really on their side was that since they were following a trail, it might still be moving. If the bloody trail was anything to go by, it was still taking the girl to wherever its den was, and she was probably still alive. They didn't have much time to save her, but maybe they at least had a chance. And regardless of what condition she was in, they had to make sure this beast was unable to attack again. "Hurry up!" he called out to the troops. They clanged around in their armor, tired from searching the woods all night. They mumbled at his words, and Gareth was sure he heard a few hushed whispers about how he wasn't the boss here. Their captain was. But the captain was a good man, and was wise enough to defer to Gareth out here when it called for it, in his domain. Gareth didn't actually have any rank to order anyone, let alone soldiers, around, but expertise could be a rank all on its own at times. "So what is it that took her, Ranger?" one of the soldiers asked Gareth, a reedy-looking youth. "It was a wolf," one of the others answered confidently. "Had to be. What else could attack a person?" "A bear, if it's hungry enough," a third soldier remarked. A fourth soldier scoffed at the rest. "Are you three stupid? It climbed up into her room and took her away. What wolf could do that? What bear? No, it had to be an ogre. That's the only thing that could have done it." "Ogres don't exist," another man exclaimed. "Come off it, Gerald." "Do those look like wolf tracks to you?" Gareth finally asked, wanting to put the argument to rest before it started getting out of hand and drove him crazy. "Or bear tracks? They definitely aren't ogre tracks. We're dealing with something else. I'm not sure what it is yet, but I am certain it's dangerous, so talking needs to stop before we draw it to us. Understand?" Soldiers all nodded in unison. Captain Malkin walked over and said, "You bunch, quit causing problems and try to be useful. Keep an eye out for anything that can help us find the girl." The soldiers nodded again and renewed their search. "I don't know how you deal with it," Gareth muttered to the captain, glancing back at the men as they crept around bushes. "Deal with what exactly?" "Them. People. All of it," Gareth griped. "I can't stand dealing with that kind of thing, but you do it daily. What academy do I have to attend to learn to do that?" Malcolm chuckled. "It's not as bad as you think. That's all I'll say. You've just gotten too damn used to not having anyone around. It's just culture shock for you, I'd say. I hated them before I came out here, and I'll still hate them long after I've grown old. It's just who I am, Captain." Right as Malcolm was about to reply, there was a squishy slapping noise in the shadows to Gareth's right. Everyone turned to see the cause of the noise, and one soldier held a torch out where the noise had originated. Lying there on the ground was a human leg. Some of the soldiers gasped at the discovery. Gareth didn't, mostly because he felt like if he opened his mouth, he would vomit. There was still blood leaking out of the stump side, bite marks evidently showing that it had been gnawed off by the razor teeth of a vicious killer. A small child's shoe was the only sign of who it belonged to. Gareth lost all hope of finding the girl now. "That's definitely her," Malcolm said solemnly. "But then where's the beast?" Gareth asked. Where did it come from? As the group of men all yelled warnings out to each other while torches and swords were in hand for defense, Gareth looked up. Sitting on a high branch above was a massive dark shape. Gareth might not have been able to separate it from the trees if not for the bright ruby-red eyes reflecting in the fire of the torch. There was a growl, and then two more pairs of identical eyes appeared on either side. Then they all disappeared at once, causing a small rain of leaves as it moved. This confused Gareth. Were there three of the creature? "Above!" he shouted out, drawing his own sword. It was just a rapier, much lighter and weaker than the broadswords that most of these troops carried around. It was fast and precise, more fitting with Gareth's fighting style than a much larger sword. The soldiers all looked up at his warning, seeing the beast above racing through the trees, but it was quickly gone, lost in the shadows above. "Where'd it go?" one man asked. "It disappeared." "Oh hell," a man panted, panicking. "We're all going to die." "Get a hold of yourselves," Captain Malcolm said to his men. Come in tighter. Make a proper defensive formation until it shows itself. Stand strong. Before anyone could move, a dark shape appeared from the bushes and grabbed one of the men. He was dragged away into the darkness, screaming, while his allies backed away in terror. Gareth still couldn't tell what it was, to his frustration. "Get away from the bushes and the trees," he ordered. "Get close together in the light of the torches." There was a small chance that crowding together could spare the beast away, like a herd of cows drawn together to make a formidable wall to protect against wolves. It was just a guess, but Gareth suspected that it might prefer darkness to light, judging by the fact that it attacked its victims at night and was playing with them now by attacking from the shadows. The bushes rustled, and the monster finally crept into the light, growling menacingly. Gareth was surprised at what he saw. A Cerberus. "No way," he said out loud. "Those aren't supposed to be real." The three-headed dog was a creature of legend, like the dragons and the hydras. They weren't supposed to exist, at least not anymore. But yet, here it was. It had the body of a wolf, only it was even larger than a bear. It had 3 heads, just like the legend said, all growling and moving on their own. It was the perfect predator, able to attack its prey with 3 attacks in place of 1, and uncontested in terms of physical dominance. It was faster and stronger than any of its competition for apex predator, besides the once feared dragon. Everything was prey to something like this, even humans. And now it was out to kill them. It struck at the group of soldiers with speed far faster than Gareth expected. "Watch out!" he shouted. "It's a Cerberus!" He didn't know how much help his warning would do. He had spent a lot of time studying wildlife, so he knew some of the ancient creatures' tactics, but he'd had any of these men knew how to combat a creature such as this. 2 men were grabbed, and were dragged out of reach before the others could even react and strike back. How could a creature that size move this quickly? Within seconds it had grabbed several men with its different heads and thrown them various directions, or delivered deadly bites and greatly injured them. Gareth and Malcolm stood back to back, swinging at the chaos of the creature's attack swept around them. Many men fought valiantly, but it was nearly impossible to do with an enemy that can attack in so many ways. Their numbers were quickly dwindling. "Have you ever fought one of these before?" Malcolm asked as he swung at one of the heads. "These are supposed to have been dead for over 300 years, Gareth replied. "Well, it has 3 heads. Does it mean 3 brains, or just 1? "3, I think. Each independent and a separate head." Malcolm gritted his teeth. "So you have to kill all 3 heads." "That's what I think," Gareth said. "I just don't understand how it's even here. Cerberus aren't even supposed to exist anymore." "Not something we can afford to worry about at the moment." Gareth almost didn't see it coming when a massive paw flew at him and knocked him through the air and into a tree. He hit the tree painfully, shockwaves rolling through his body. His head was swimming. He couldn't even see straight. He was stunned for several seconds, unable to move. By the time his brain was working right again, he could tell what was happening. Only Malcolm was left standing. The rest of the group had been dealt with ferociously, bodies lying through the forest floor. Gareth recognized one of the soldiers who had argued earlier, now with his head bent at an unnatural angle with deep bite marks around his throat. The rest of the bodies didn't look much better. "Bring it, you son of a bitch!" Malcolm roared, charging. "I'll make sure you aren't hurting anyone else!" Malcolm fought the Cerberus valiantly. He darted around it, trying to get behind. That seemed to be the safer side by a large margin. The giant 3-headed dog struggled to turn, but Malcolm kept up with it when it did. With a yell, Malcolm thrust his sword and it beheaded the left side of the head of the Cerberus, which shrieked while being separated from its body. Gareth suddenly felt like they had a chance, if an incredibly tiny one. He tried to get up, but was still shaky from the hit he had taken. His legs wobbled while he used the tree to support his climb back to his feet. He had to help Malcolm in the fight, but his body wasn't doing him any favors at the moment. He seemed to be slowly getting his senses back, just not fast enough. He took steps forward, trying not to fall. They couldn't afford it. Malcolm kept trying to get more hits in, keeping on his backside, but now the Cerberus was being more protective of itself now that it was hurt. Suddenly the monster kicked back with its hind leg, taking Malcolm's knees out from under him. The man hit the ground on his stomach, hard, temporarily stunned. Cerberus used that time to turn and attack. Gareth watched in horror as the defenseless captain was ripped apart right before his eyes. Now it was just down to Gareth. He ran forward, letting out a battle cry. The Cerberus noticed him and tried to dodge the attack, and Gareth only hit the shoulder of the beast instead of one of the heads. Angry, the Cerberus struck back with its claws. Gareth barely rolled away in its time. but his rapier was knocked away. He drew his knife, knowing that things weren't looking good now. A puny knife? Against this? What could he possibly do? The beast sensed that it had the advantage now, and it lunged at him with one of its remaining 2 heads. Gareth hopped back and stabbed down, the Cerberus biting where he had just been. Against all odds, the knife split right through its skull, causing the head to suddenly lose life. Gareth dodged before the other head could strike, and suddenly found himself facing just one head, but unarmed. Cerberus was in a fury now, raging at the loss of its other 2 heads, leaving only the one in the middle. It charged at him, preparing to finish this once and for all. Gareth looked around frantically for anything to use, and noticed one of the dead soldiers next to him. Gareth pulled the shield from the dead man's grasp and pulled it in front of him just as the Cerberus struck with its final head. The shield rang as the soldier collided with it, wood splintering as the shield caved in the middle, but didn't quite break. The momentum carried the Cerberus over Gareth, where it sprawled on the ground, stunned by the collision. Seeing his chance, Gareth crawled frantically over to the Cerberus and bashed its head with the shield. Then he hit it again. It was still trying to get up. He hit it again, and again, and again. It still moved, albeit slowly. Gareth looked around at all the dead bodies around him, and thought about all the new widows back at the village, all the grieving mothers, the children whose parents would not return, the child who did die tonight. With a cry of anguish, Gareth struck down with a shield one final time, ending this battle once and for all. He had won. The beast that had caused all of this death had been slain. And that is chapter 1 of The Coming Storm, Hunting the Beast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you support my journey to get this published and hopefully get it on shelves someday. That'd be really incredible. Please leave a like. Check out my other stuff. Check out my gaming videos. I might try and do chapter 2 at some point, but I'm going to need to... It might take a little bit because I need to redo a lot for chapters 2 through 5. Just because I originally wrote them quite a while back, and it's not up to par. So I want to rewrite them, make sure they're up to the standard I have for the rest of this. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. Bye.